Well, hello. I would like to greet tonight's guest in Cree. Forgive me if I butcher this, but Tanase, hello. Tawa, come in, you're welcome. And welcome to episode number 16 of 97 Octane Hockey, where we talk about all things hockey. And on this episode, we celebrate the diversity and achievements of players from different backgrounds and cultures. Today, we have an incredibly special guest named Cardinal, a Cree Indigenous man who runs the Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube pages for Indigenous NHL rookie cards. My first interaction with Naim goes back 3 years ago when I had the pleasure of sitting in with Michael Hebert on Oilers Live. We had Naim on his show, and from the very first word this man said, he captivated my attention with his friendly, warm, thoughtful, intelligent, and deeply caring spirit. Ironically, my two co-hosts in Chad Graham, top right, Bob Schmidt, bottom left, were also a part of that very show 3 years ago as listeners and texters into that show. This is our first show back in 2 weeks because I took a holiday with my fiance Kim, where I made a point of going to meet Naim in person, and 45 minutes with this individual was not enough. So I had to ask him to come on tonight. Naim is an avid collector and an Indigenous hockey historian who is also a passionate advocate for preserving and promoting the Cree language and culture. He has also written the stats and biographies for the players on the backs of the first People's Rookie Card series by Upper Deck, which features 8 Indigenous former NHLers who never had a licensed trading card before. We hope you enjoy this podcast and learn something new about hockey and Indigenous culture. Naim, my friend, hi, thank you for joining us today. And I got to let him back in. You're back, buddy, and hopefully you heard some of that intro.
I did. Sorry, guys. I'm having Wi-Fi issues at my house, so I apologize. I just decided to run off my phone here so I could be here. So thanks for having me.
Thanks for being Johnny on the spot with the tech. I've got lots of questions for you, but I'll let Chad and Bob take a few first.
Sure.
Well, actually, it's weird. Oh, go ahead there, Chad.
Bob. No, Bob, don't let me step on your toes. By all means, you go first.
This never stopped me before, Chad. Okay. Yeah, like Dursa, you alluded to it last time with Naim was on Oilers Live, and then both Chad and myself, I think, were texting, and I think I actually called in as well for that episode because I remember bantering back and forth with Naim because we come from a similar area originally. Like you're from Tall Cree, Reggie. Is that correct, Naim?
Yeah, I mostly grew up in Fort Vermilion.
Fort Vermilion, that's right, where I was born. Yeah. Probably only about 80 years before you, but whatever. That's And when did you move from there? Like where are you at now?
I live in Kelowna, but I moved away in about 2002.
Okay.
I moved to Edmonton, went to university, and then I just stuck around there, and I got to Kelowna in January of 2020.
Yeah. So, but you're growing up years in the Fort Vermilion area. Was the illustrious Fort Hawks, which I've had many battles against. Darren Smith and the Menine boys, and
Oh yeah.
and Dino Flett and what have you. So I'm sure those are some names that strike a chord. But I'm so glad to hear that Dursa reached out to you again, and to get a chance to talk to you again is going to be awesome. So welcome back.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate the invitation to get back here, and also, yeah, all those names just all ring a clear bell. I watched all those guys playing hockey in the Ford Arena growing up, and the Ford Hawks were a pretty important and popular team in my community when I was coming up.
Actually, that's a question I had for you, Naim. Is how were the Fort Hawks looked upon in Fort Vermilion? Like, was that something that you hockey guys kind of looked up to that team? Was that a goal for a lot of local guys to be able to make the Fort Hawks and play for them in certain tournaments and what have you?
Yeah, I would say so. Like there, a lot of the people I grew up with, like I didn't play hockey in my community when I was growing up, but like most of my friends and my family members who were playing hockey, like going to watch the Fort Hawks games, where that was a thing to do. Like when there was tournaments and there was league games going on. Like I remember being in that Fort Arena for tournaments, and it being a packed house, and that was our entertainment in our community, and that was how we spent our time. And like the Fort Hawks were probably like they were one of the best hockey teams around, and a lot of younger players aspired to be a part of that team. And over the years, like a lot of the guys that I grew up with, when they were done playing their minor hockey, they kind of graduated and went to that team, and it just kind of continued like that over the years.
Oh, they were legendary. We always called them the Montreal Canadiens of the local league, because they just had that kind of that aura about them. But also to the point, like we hated them, like so, because they were like our number one rival for every tournament we played in, especially up in the Challenge Cup, when the Fort would come over there and try to take that title away from us. But always good battles. And then years later, in Grand Prairie, I was just playing in the Industrial League there. This one season, I'm like I was a goalie, and I'm suiting up there, and in the room comes Darren Smith. Darren Smith comes walking into the room with his hockey gear on, and we both lock eyes, because we've grown up hating each other, playing each other up so many years against each other. We both locked eyes, and all of a sudden we just smiled and laughed, and we sat beside each other that whole season and just exchanged war stories back and forth. It was really interesting to see how they viewed us and how we viewed them. We were able to swap those stories back, and we always say that we hated them, but I think it was kind of like a respectful hate per se, right? Because you knew they were going to give you a run for their money, and both of us, we just did everything it took to win, no matter how many lines we crossed at those moments, right? So.
Yeah, and I grew up watching Darren, and Darren was a very well-known hockey player in our community, and he's probably one of the better players to come out of our community, and he's just kind of like one of the, like, I guess players you could say was like a backbone of that hockey team.
100%. Well, he was the franchise player. I always thought of him as franchise player. Just a wicked shot, wicked speed, great hockey sense, and one of those guys who did whatever it took to win, whether it was mind games or physical or what have you. Like he was a legend to the point, like I said, we hated the guy.
Yeah.
All right, Chad, fire away.
Are you sure? Are you done?
No, I'll interrupt you. That's all I'll do.
Well, I actually I want to ask everybody on this panel right now who their favorite Indigenous hockey player is of all time. We'll start with Bob, because Bob likes to talk.
No. Well, it's what you're supposed to do on a podcast. For me, it's the legendary Johnny Busick for the Boston Bruins. I do think he goes down as probably Mr. Boston Bruin of all time. And actually, he actually stayed on with the team for years as an equipment manager and what have you, even once he was done playing. So he's been an integral member of that the Boston franchise forever. And yeah, I pick him as my favorite.
Mikey?
I think the guy on my left shoulder is probably mine.
Darnell?
Grant Fear. Yeah, Fear.
You jerk, that's mine. So mine. That's it. I quit. I'm out of here. You
I,
guys
I
figure
thought, I
it out.
thought, I thought, like prior to this, you were conceding to Carey Price.
No. I love Carey Price. Don't get me wrong, but Grant Fuhr is definitely my all-time favorite Indigenous player.
There you go.
Name? This will be a good one.
Yeah. I would have to say mine is probably Jordan Tutu. And just
Oh yeah.
electric hockey player, just next level energy, and just kind of one of the guys that you probably don't want to play against. And when he was coming up in junior, playing in Brandon, he's making a name for himself. And then that World Junior Tournament in 2003 just kind of like put him on the map. And then when he got to the NHL, there was just a lot of excitement around him. Being the first Inuk player in the NHL, and just the way he played is just kind of made him a fan favorite.
It's perfect that his name was Tutu, so Tutu Train worked really well. It's maybe it wasn't even by accident; it was maybe by design. Maybe before we before we keep grilling you on a bunch of questions, why don't we get you just to reveal
Yeah.
sort of everything that you're about and what you do, and because me and Chad and Bob all were there for the first time you were with Michael. Not everybody that's going to watch this was, so maybe go back to the start and tell us about what you do.
Yeah. So I guess I'm a hockey card collector. I'm a big hockey fan. Like I said, I didn't grow up playing hockey. Couldn't really afford to play hockey, and I just picked up collecting hockey cards because that's the way that I stayed connected to hockey. It like really brought the game home for me when I was growing up. And I went away from collecting hockey cards for a long time, and I started collecting again back in like 2004. And then, about a decade later, I was still collecting hockey cards, and I decided that I wanted to focus my attention more on something more that was a little bit more meaningful for me. So I decided that I was going to collect one rookie card of every Indigenous player that's played in the NHL, and that's kind of where my focus has been in the last decade or so, and trying to bring awareness to the impact that those players have had on the game through hockey cards, and telling their story through hockey cards, and just trying to share like the accomplishments that a lot of these players had, and like talk about some of the things that they went through as players and individuals, um, and also just really try to bring that back, like not only to the hockey card community, but also just like to the community in general, because a lot of those stories need to be told. And like the players that I've collected over the years, like a lot of them, I had no idea the things that they accomplished in their hockey careers until I started collecting hockey cards, and reading up on them, and seeing how accomplished they are, like in the game and outside of the game, and just really trying to bring that home to my community, and especially try to focus on youth, and try to share those stories. Like a lot of those players have similar lived experiences. They've went through the same things that a lot of us go through, and they were able to make like the pinnacle of their career, like their sport that they picked. And really what I want to do through that, like in sharing those stories, is try to inspire people, and hopefully inspire them, and like make them want to like chase their dreams, and go after whatever it is that they want to do with life, like whether it's hockey or some other sport, or like there's a career that they want to do, or there's things that they want to do with their life. And like I really think like the stories that those hockey players have can inspire people to do those things.
Maybe if you want to go, and then Chad, and then me, we'll start kind of going in that order for asking them questions.
Well, I'm curious now. So what year was that when you started getting the idea of collecting the rookie cards of the Indigenous players?
Yeah, so that was 2014.
How big is your collection now?
Well, I think I have about 104 different players in my collection or so. Just that put a lot of time into researching, and like doing a lot of reading online, reading newspaper articles, watching like videos, reading books, all those kinds of things to learn about their stories, but also get some of their background as Indigenous people.
Amazing. In 9 years.
Yeah, in 9 years, yeah, and it's like it's ongoing, so it never really stops. Like I'm always looking up different players and re-looking up players and looking at different players' careers, and like I'm always learning stuff. Like I don't claim to know everything, and I'm always just ready to learn.
Well, Chad claims to know everything, so I'll let Mr. Know-It-All ask you this question.
Listen here. Nobody asked you, Bob. Not one person. What do you think about our goaltending coaching in Edmonton?
Don't know anything about that.
So it's kind
So
of an
we should
ongoing
fire him,
theme.
what do you say?
So it's an ongoing theme with Chad that he's got to ask everybody that question. Doesn't matter what walk of life they come from. Naim, first question I have for you is that office in Kelowna, has it been able to sway your allegiance of an NHL team to a team I'm not going to mention that's a little west of you, or are you still an Oilers fan?
I'm still an Oilers fan. I
That's
lived in Edmonton. I lived in Edmonton for 18 years. I grew up northern Alberta. Oilers are always on the TV, and that's I guess that's my hometown team. So I can't stop cheering for the Oilers, even when you hate cheering for them.
Yeah.
Sometimes I pretend I don't cheer for them.
Your answer is on par, and you can stay. Bob, go ahead again.
Well, that's all it took.
Yeah.
So I've also noticed, because I follow you on Twitter or X or whatever they call it now. There's lots of times where you have extra cards or people send you cards, and then is that one of the things that you do? Is you hand them out to kids and what have you?
Yeah, so a couple of years ago, during COVID, when things were kind of starting to straighten out again, and people were starting to open things up a little bit more, and I knew that there's a lot of people that really wanted to like start doing hockey camps again. So I asked people to send in donations of just regular hockey cards of Indigenous players, and what I do with those is I send them to different hockey camps across the country, Indigenous hockey camps, and I get the coaches and the organizers to distribute them to the kids, kind of like on everyone's behalf. So I make up the packs of the cards that are sent in, and they're essentially donated to kids all over the place.
Chad, you got another goalie coach question?
So have you met Ted Nolan yet?
No, Ted and I have not met yet. Like, I've had conversations with his son, Brandon, but I haven't had the opportunity
Yep.
to meet Ted yet. But we've communicated through his son, I guess.
Yeah, that's a pretty big deal. I was pretty happy to see that happen. So good for you, and everybody appreciates it.
Oh, thank you.
So going back to that first interview with Hebert, you mentioned again tonight that Jordan Tutu is your favorite player, and you got a chance to meet him. You told me in Kelowna that you met up with him in Costco. So are we through the fangirl stage yet, or do you still get butterflies and nervous when you meet him?
Yeah, I was a little bit nervous, but I kind of just played it cool, and I was like, "Hey, are you Jordan Tutu?" And he's like, "Yeah, I am." But yeah, it
Remember
had
me?
a really
I'm
nice,
Naim.
yeah, yeah. I had a good conversation with him, but yeah, I still get a little nervous around the players and stuff if I see them out and about.
When you research for these rookie cards, or even just to track down which players in NHL are Indigenous, besides some of the ones that are more obvious, like what kind of Chad mentioned their Grand Fuhrer. Like I totally forgot that his mom was Indigenous, and so like how do you do? Is just research on your side where you discover which players are Indigenous, or do you get kind of like a word of mouth thing going, or what kind of research do you does it take to find this stuff out?
Yeah, well, when I started, I used the website. It was called nativehockey.com, and they had about 50 different players on there that were listed on their website, and that's what kind of like got me springboarded into this. But I would always Google like Indigenous hockey players, Native hockey players, Aboriginal hockey players, just like trying to use keywords like that, and finding different websites or media sites where there was different articles, or even like there was message boards where like people would list players who they thought were Indigenous, and then I would put time into like I would take those names and then I would put time into trying to find out if they were or not, and like whether that's like um finding out through the internet or like connecting with people who might know them to verify that. But over the years, like a lot of people have started reaching out to me and bringing names forward. And once it's verified, like I try to vet every single player as best as possible, and then add them to my collection. Because like I made mistakes over the years. Like for example, like the Rivers brothers for a number of years, Sean and Jamie were listed as being Indigenous, but they're actually not. And I found out years after from someone who knows them and like that I know personally as well, who spoke directly with them, and they said, yeah, they don't know how it got started that people were talking about them as being Indigenous, but they said that they weren't, and it kind of got cleared up that way. So I really like try to put time in being able to verify that before I add them to my collection. And there's a few players that recently like come to my attention through like different Indigenous tournaments that have happened recently, but like I I got their hockey cards, but I like knowing what their like heritage is and stuff and what their ancestry is before I put it out there.
Bob's going to keep asking the serious questions. I'm going to keep the fun questions rolling right now.
All right.
So I'm going to go back to Mike's question about the what you think of our hated rival, even more than Calgary, now that they have acquired a certain player that we all love on this channel. And is that going to change your mind on whether or not you cheer for them?
We're still talking about the same team.
Vancouver?
Your hated rival? Yeah.
I think that's an Ethan Bear indirect question.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's an Ethan Bear indirect question.
I'm more of like in that case I'd be more of like an individual fan than the team fan. Hoping that he does really well with the team. I know he hasn't been re-signed yet. He had an injury in the World Championship,
Shoulder,
and
yeah.
it was like coming up on a contract year. Yeah, shoulder, and he hasn't been re-signed yet. So I'm still waiting to hear what's going to be in the future for him.
Well, Vancouver seems pretty excited to have him, and we aren't excited that Vancouver has him.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say that.
Yeah, that's a bit of a tough break for Ethan. Following up, I guess, sort of on Bob there, and something I wanted to kind of dig into from before. All the research you've done on players, what are some of the examples of the most inspiring stories of perseverance you've come across as you dig into these guys?
Oh, I could think of a couple like even like I say Jordan Tutu is one of my favorite, and like
For sure.
like the things that he's had to overcome in his life, that he lost his brother and like going through that trauma, and then you read his book and you hear about the things that he went through as a youth growing up in his home community. And I through myself, like being able to hear about that and like seeing him get to the NHL and like getting through the things that he did, like with his addictions and stuff while he was in the NHL, and like just I think a lot of that stuff is really inspiring to me, and being able to know like from my own lived experience growing up and having similar going through similar things, or just like able to connect to players like that, and as well like another guy, Danny Hodgson, and like just like the amount of accomplishments that he's had in his career, and he's like, from a small community in northern Alberta. Like he was born in Fort Vermilion, grew up in Fort Mac, and just being at the pinnacle of hockey for the amount of time that he was, like coming from, like, you go to Fort Vermilion, you go to Fort Mac, like you're isolated, like you're like
Yeah.
like we live in northern, like really northern points of Alberta, and to know somebody like came out of like those communities and was at the top of the game, and accomplishing so much like that's inspiring to me. And like those kinds of things I want like people to know, and like I try to share those things through hockey cards, um, because someone who's going through that, or is living in an isolated community, or something like that, can hear that and say, oh well, they made it, like why can't I? And I'm hoping that's what a lot of the stories will provide for people.
Well, it becomes relatable, right? In
Yeah.
that extent, for sure. So I have a bit of a two-parter here. Number one, am I just to assume that your prized possession is the 2-2 rookie card?
No, I like I have a number of like 2-2 rookie cards. But I would say like a lot of my older cards are probably more of my like prized possessions, like cards going back to like the 1950s and 1940s and 1930s. Like those cards to me, like they mean a lot more to me, because those are different times back then, like where it wasn't easy. Like it's still not easy to be an Indigenous person, but like back then when you're in like the 30s and 40s and 50s, like that's whole different era, and like you're treated differently, like openly, and it's like an acceptable kind of thing that happens. And to know like the things that were going on in society at the same time, and to know like players like Fred Sasakamoose, George Armstrong, Joe Benoit, like Johnny Harms, players who played in that era, like to get to the NHL and like have those hockey cards, like those are like meaningful stories. And those stories are like, to me, and from my perspective, those stories are being held within those hockey cards. Like you look at the hockey card, you look at the era, and you know the history of what's happening in society at that time, and like even in hockey rinks, and to know that they made it, they stuck it out, they got there. That's why those cards are most valuable to me.
And then my follow-up to that then is, what is the one player out there that you're just dying to get their rookie card from? What's your holy grail?
I wouldn't say like a player, but maybe like more like cards. Like there's like in modern era of collecting, there's cards that are made to be a lot more rare and a lot harder to find. So I would say, a card like that, like there's a Jordan 2-2 Young Guns. It's called a high gloss, and there's only 10 of them made. So they're impossible to find. A card like that, or maybe like a Carey Price, high gloss Young Guns as well. Like just cards that are very, very rare and like you don't see too often. Those are the kind of cards that would be considered a holy grail. But the top of that list would be that Jordan 2-2 Young Guns high gloss.
And now Chad's going to ask you what your favorite gum flavor is or something.
Listen, I used to love O-Pee-Chee because of the gum. Let's face it.
You get both, yeah.
I mean, like an important topic, should the Oilers fire Dustin Schwartz?
You already asked that. Get something else. Come on.
I didn't get an answer. I need an answer. Just say yes. Just say yes and appease me.
Oh, yes.
Oh, good. Good point, Naim.
Actually, on a serious note, as an Oilers fan, how do you feel this season's going to go? Do you think this is the one?
So hard to say. There's like, you have a look at last season and the things that were kind of holding the Oilers back, and you're wondering like, did they fill some of those areas that need to be filled going into the upcoming year. And like one of those is obviously, I think, goaltending. And the goaltending could go either way. There's a lot of potential there with the current goaltender, but it's still young, and you never know what way their career is going to go. I'm hoping that they'll like develop into like the kind of goalie that the Oilers need, but I guess just only time will tell.
Well, Chad and I are strong
We
believers.
had one goalie.
Chad and I are strong believers in the 2024 redemption tour of Jack Campbell, right, Chad?
We had a goalie in the playoffs that wanted to play. That's all I'm going to say. Leave it there before I get angry and throw stuff.
So then I guess I'll steer the ship back on the rails here. And so you talk, Jordan Tutu being your favorite player, and you talked about reading his book, and you've also talked about stick handling through the margins, another book that both of those I need to get from, I believe, Amazon.com and read them. Is there any others that have kind of caught your attention since that 3 years ago meeting with Mike?
As far as books go?
Yeah.
I would say Fred Sasakamus's book.
Okay.
Really, really hits home. Talks a lot about his residential school experience. I also really like Brian Trotry's book. Just really goes into his upbringing and how hard they used to work when they were growing up, and how that helped in terms of hockey, and just hearing about like all of his like I like hearing about those like stories about when players are in junior, and the things that aren't as publicized as like when you're playing professionally, and hearing about a lot of the backstories of things that happened while they were coming up. So those are two books that I really appreciated
I guess
since the last time we talked.
I guess as a follow-up to all of that too, are those books that you can actually use in your professional life too, like at work?
Oh yeah, like I would be able to refer back to that Fred Sasakamo's book, like in some of the work that I do,
Right.
and just like educating people about history of residential schools, and um, truth and reconciliation, and you can use some of those examples, I guess, and I guess like stories like that also inspire me to want to continue to do the work that I do.
Was Fred the first Indigenous NHL player?
Fred?
Yeah.
No, he wasn't. There were several players before him. The earliest that is like confirmed is Clarence Taffy Abel, who played in the 20s. But there's also a story about a player who played for the Toronto Arenas back in 1918-19. And I'm just drawing a blank right now on his name. And I had a friend of mine create a custom card.
Wow.
But anyway, there's a lot of discrepancy about whether he played or not. The amount that he played, there was it was reported in the newspaper that he was going to be in the lineup. There's stories about him not like being in the arena, and it's not known for sure like whether he played or not. The name is just escaping me right now, and it's like after I'm off the podcast, I'm gonna remember it, and it's someone I always talk about too. But there's also like other players who played in the 40s, like Jim Jameson played for the Rangers, and I mentioned Johnny Harms played for the Blackhawks in the 40s. Joe Benoit played for the Montreal Canadiens, and even George Armstrong played before Fred. So a number of players, yeah. But all just I think like all just equally as impactful as the other for things that they did.
So I got the Toronto Arena's 1919 roster here right in front of me right now. That's the year actually the Stanley Cup first got canceled because of the flu.
Oh,
Okay, let's see here. Jack Adams, probably not. Harry Cameron, Rusty Crawford, Corb Denneny, Hap Holmes, Paul Jacobs, Bert Lindsay.
Paul Jacobs.
Paul Jacobs?
Yeah.
Defenseman.
You're going to have to rip Google a new one name because they've got a whole bunch of different people as the first Indigenous player, like Fred Sakamoose, Taffy Abel. Yeah, boy.
So Paul Jacobs played one game. Yeah, one game that season. One game in his career, even. So.
Yeah, there's also like there's stories that he played up to 5, but it's not known for sure.
Hockey Reference has one game. Yeah. Interesting.
Well,
yeah,
different.
I believe
times.
Yeah.
It was different times.
Not like today
too,
where you have the internet.
Well, that in the NHL back then, like that was a hobby. Those guys all had full-time jobs. Like there was very few players getting paid to play back then, right? So,
well, they were getting paid, but they were getting paid pennies.
Yeah, not enough. Yeah. CFL wages.
They were getting jobs, is what they were getting.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, you're gonna go work for the owner's buddy who owns a construction company. That's how you're gonna get paid. Different times.
What's your next question, Chad?
Oh, you know my other favorite? I'm just a fan right now, but my other question, or not a question, but my other favorite Indigenous player is TJ Oshie. I love that guy.
Yeah, good player.
Oh man, he's so good.
I got a 2-part question. Is the collection complete, and is Carey Price still the most valuable financially card that you possess?
Yeah, I would say that the collection is complete. Most like the player, like I just usually just wait for players each year to come in the league and get their first card now. As far as I know, it's complete, but at the same time, it's always growing too. So, like there is, going back like last year, I found out about another player named Mitch Lamoureux, played in the 90s, played a handful of games in the NHL, and had to pick up one of it. He doesn't have an NHL card, so I had to pick up one of his junior cards for my collection. But there's always like situations like that, and like where I'll go back and find someone, but I'll also be waiting for someone to come into the league and get their first hockey card. So it's always growing. But I would say like that the Carey Price is probably not the most valuable card in my collection anymore. I do have some pretty rare stuff, but like the prices of cards it's always fluctuating, so it's hard to say like from one week to the next when what your card's going to be worth. So I usually try not to pay attention to like what they're worth, and just try to appreciate them just kind of for what they are. But I do know some of them are worth quite a bit.
Bobby?
Oh, I thought you had a 2-parter there. Sorry, Darcy.
No, that was the 2-parter. Like, is the collection complete and Carey Price?
Oh yeah. Well, you bring up a good point there, or Naim, or something interesting. The fact that your collection's pretty much complete for all the guys that are in NHL right now or have been. So are there guys, Indigenous players, that you're kind of keeping an eye on in juniors, stuff like that, waiting for them to get their break? Like, do you almost have like a prospect pool in your mind or on a note somewhere, like, oh, when this guy gets in, I'm getting his card?
Yeah, there's a few of them. Like Connor Roulette was drafted by Dallas a few years ago, hoping he'll make it to the NHL. Also, Kerry Terrence was just drafted this past NHL draft in the second round. Also, Jason Shagabe was also just drafted in this most recent draft. Um, but yeah, I usually just keep an eye out for those kind of players, and yeah, usually the card that I look for is first is the young guns.
Right.
Yeah, I usually don't. I try not to go after some of the like the higher end stuff right away.
Graham?
Listening. You know I'm going to ask about shorts, so carry on.
Okay, well, I'll take the ball here and run with it. Oregon Ducks, what drew you to them?
Well, I started watching college football probably in 2010 or 2011. I didn't really know a whole lot about football. I just kind of like fringe um, fringe fan, and like I had no clue what was going on on the football field. And I started playing flag football one year in Edmonton, and I had a friend who played, and they just invited me out, and I really enjoyed it. And I started learning about football and watching it a lot more. And um, I watch a lot of college sports, so I watch March Madness every year. Pay a lot of attention to college basketball, and I wanted to start watching college football. So I just turned the TV on one weekend and was watching a few games. The Oregon Ducks were on the TV, and my background is like as a basketball player, so I was watching them, and I really felt that the way they played, like the high scoring that they were doing, just getting up and down the field was kind of like basketball to me. So this really drew me to their team, and that's what like brought me on as a fan of their football team. And like I've been I've been watching them ever since.
I got
Even like
another
through yeah.
I got another one on the same subject, kind of, but I was not expecting that answer from you. I thought it was just going to be the bright colors of their uniforms and stuff that really stand out. um, yeah. So on that, you're in Kelowna, they're in Oregon. Have you seen a game live? Have you went down there?
Yes, I think I've been to 5 games.
Wow.
Yeah, down in Oregon. Um, Yeah, I usually try. I've been trying to get down to Eugene every year, which where they play Eugene, Oregon. I obviously couldn't travel during COVID times, but got to got down there last fall. Um, Hoping to get back again this fall and go catch another game. But I've been to about 5 of their games down there. I
Very,
love it down there. Like the atmosphere at a college football game is like nothing else. Like the tailgating, like the energy in the stadium, like the just like all the things that are going on, like the whole ambiance of the game itself, and like the fans and hearing like banter and like cheering and stuff. Like there's nothing like it.
Actually, that's a pretty good segue to my question here. Was have you ever thought about taking your card collecting thing in towards other sports?
I have a little bit. Like I dabbled in collecting basketball and football, but I just never enjoyed it as much. Hockey is like for me, like even though I grew up playing basketball, but like hockey for me is like the first sport that I ever loved. And when I collect hockey cards, I think about those times when I wanted to be out there on the ice, and that like looking at that hockey card is how I got on the ice. Is looking at that card and seeing the player, and that's what keeps me collecting hockey cards and like staying focused on it. Even though like I played all the other sports, and I really found success in like playing basketball over the years. Like hockey was always like that was like my first love, and that's what takes me back to when I was a kid.
Do you do research though on say other Indigenous athletes in other sports as well?
A little bit, not as much. Like, if someone brings someone to my attention, I'll just like kind of check into their career a bit, and like,
Right.
just like say, oh, that's pretty cool. I didn't know they were Indigenous, and it's yeah, but it's nothing like what I'm doing with hockey.
Yeah.
So Kelowna Rockets versus the Blazers. Who?
I'll cheer for Kelowna. Yeah, there's a bit of a rivalry
Okay,
here.
Tiger Woods versus Phil. Who you picking?
Oh, Tiger Woods now or Tiger Woods 20 years ago?
Whoa, there we go.
Good. That's a great question. Okay, Tiger Woods prime, Phil Mickelson prime.
I'd probably go Tiger.
Attaboy. See, we're friends.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had to make the difficult decision on who I could see when I was in Kelowna because prior to you, we had Paige Norsey on the show too, and I just didn't have quite enough time to arrange to meet you both. But the next time I'm down that way, I need to meet your whole family, name the wife and the three little ones, and I look forward to it. That could end up being a pretty frequent kind of thing because Kim's family has property in between Sicamous and Salmon Arm there. I think it's Mara Lake, if I'm saying it right, and not far from you, really. It was a fabulous 45 minutes we spent together.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I definitely appreciated you coming all this way to visit. And yeah, Mara is a really beautiful place. And yeah, hopefully next time you come, you can meet my entire family.
Yeah, have a little bit more time with you.
Yeah.
That the gentleman in your office, I forget, but he was a unforgettable Canucks fan. We were gaining subscribers and followers when we weren't doing any content because he followed us, and hopefully we can have something on here other than yourself that might interest him in the future.
Yeah.
What was his name again?
Cody.
Cody, yeah. Cody, the Canucks fan, and he wants us to get BX as Chad. So if you ever can arrange that would be good for Cody.
Yeah,
that would be crazy. Getting BX up.
If you two have
Naim Cardinal, but he's pretty good.
If you two have anything else for Naim, go ahead, and then I'll close this down and let Naim get back to the family, which I don't know what he did with, so he could spend an hour with us. But
well, first a quick one before I have a big one for you is how the fire situation affect you guys down there, you personally?
We got evacuated for a week. The fire got pretty close to our house, like I could see it out the front door.
Wow.
When it came across the lake onto the mountain that's like right next to our house. So the fire came all the way over the mountain from the lake side of the mountain onto our side of the mountain, and you could see it coming, and it looked like it was gonna come right down the mountain, but luckily it started going across instead of down. But yeah, we were right in the fire zone, and unfortunately, like, people lost their homes and some property and things like that, and but luckily no one was hurt or anything like that. But we were very fortunate to not have been as impacted as other people.
That's close enough, though. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And the other thing I was wondering, have you? Well, maybe you're very aware of the correlation for you as Indigenous people. Part of the histories is through storytelling, right? That's how a lot of things were done, and you're kind of carrying on that tradition now, even if it is centralized to hockey and the hockey players, Indigenous hockey players. But that whole tradition of storytelling, and like you mentioned before, is the fact that you use these hockey cards to tell their stories. I'm sure, like, have you thought about that? The fact that you're kind of carrying on your people's legacy in this manner?
No, I haven't really thought about that before you mentioned it, but yeah, I guess that's a good point. I never thought about it that way. But yeah, that's true.
I think it's important stuff that you're doing for sure, and you definitely found your niche. I've seen all through social media that you've been able to tell your story and share your experiences and share these players' experiences on a lot of different venues. So congratulations to you, Naim, and a very good pleasure here to have you again on the show.
Well, thank you. I just got to say, like, the experience has been very like humbling for me, and like um yeah, I just like it's been amazing, the things that have happened because of hockey cards for me. And you know if I told myself 10 years ago when I started this, like, that's what would happen, I probably wouldn't believe it. And I feel very fortunate that hockey cards have done so much for me, and like including bringing me here. So I'm just really lucky that I got to do the things that I get to do.
Well, I hate to say that I agree with Bob because I hate agreeing with Bob, but you're a pleasure to have on this podcast. And to not believe what you've done is you wouldn't have believed that 10 years ago or 5 years ago or whatever. Is I don't believe that because I think you work hard and it's showing. Um, Great job, and I can't wait to talk to you more.
No, thank you.
So I'll close this down, and got a kind of a big warm fuzzy speech to say about your name, but I guess I need to take care of some business first for the network. Some pretty significant news. If you haven't heard, Michael's Oilers Live show, along with Dash and the Fantasy Hockey Hacks. So Michael and Dash on Tuesdays will be a part of Edmonton Sports Talk. So their show will get kind of rebroadcasted through the Dustin Nielsen kind of venture there, Edmonton Sports Talk. So that is going to give them a pretty significant boost, as well as so that's going to happen, I think, their regular Tuesday 9 o'clock time schedule, and Wednesday nights, I believe, at 9 o'clock as well. The same thing is going to go down for the Fantasy Hockey Hacks guys. So congratulations to them. That is huge for them, and that is really going to help them propel what they're doing already forward. Us here, we're going to keep doing what we do, usually Thursday nights. I'm looking at maybe in the morning, since I take my son to school right now between 7 and 7:30, kind of doing a brief like morning show from 8 to 8:30, almost like just a news bulletin kind of thing with this. And then we'll continue our Thursday nights till the season starts, and then we'll come up with a plan what we're going to do during the season, either pregame or postgame shows probably. So without all that being said, and I guess the other thing is that there's tons of articles going on heavyhockey.com, almost one or two or sometimes three a day. Now, I think the goal was for the writers to try to get an article a month, but it seems like everybody's ramped up that, and so there's lots to see and do on heavyhockey.com. Thanks for listening to 97 Hockey, where we talk about all things hockey and celebrate the achievement tonight and every day going forward of Indigenous players. We hope you enjoyed this episode, learned something new. We want to thank our special guest, Mr. Naim Cardinal from Indigenous Rookie Cards, for sharing his passion and knowledge with us. You can check out his amazing collection of cards and stories on his website, or follow him on Instagram or on Twitter. Naim, you are an inspiration to us and to many young hockey fans out there, near and far. We appreciate your time and generosity. As we wrap up this episode, we want to say a few words in Cree, the language of Naim and many other Indigenous hockey players. Cree is one of the most widely spoken Indigenous languages in Canada, and it has many dialects and variations. We are going to use some words from the Plains Cree dialect, which is spoken in Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba. To say thank you in Cree, you can say ni wan or ahai. To say hello, you can say wakai or tensei. To say goodbye, there is no direct equivalent in Cree, but you can say something like ikosa, maka, which means that's all for now, or ki tuan ka, I'm having a hard time, wap tin ao, which means we'll see each other again. So we want to say niwan ahai wake tanse, ikose maka ki te wam ka wapam et now. Thank you. Thank you. Hello, hello. We will see each other again. This has been 97 Octane Hockey. Stay tuned for more episodes and keep supporting Indigenous hockey players. Until next time, keep your sticks on the ice and keep reaching for the stars. And go Oilers, go. Ki Tawam Ka Wapam Team. It works better if I sing it. See you again. Good night, everybody.